everybody, welcome back to another installment of Cosmetology Exam Review. Last week or the week before we talked about braiding, which then led me to thinking about extensions. And so I will kind of do a disclaimer here that I am no expert in extensions. This is not something that I have ever spent the time or the money to certify myself in, but I do know the stuff from the textbook that you'll need to know, right, for your state board, because that's really what my channel focuses on, is what do you need to know for your state exam. So I know enough to be dangerous. I've done many of these techniques in some way, but no, I am no expert in extensions, but I wanted to get you that information that you're going to need for your state board. So with that, we're going to get started on the theory behind hair extensions. Just a little reminder, if you need something more than this, I do have a program called Cosmetology Exam Review. I'll kind of talk about that at the end a little bit, but that is a program that's there to give you lots of practice tests, lots of review videos to help you prepare for the written part of your state exam. With that, let's go. Okay, so some notable notes, some things that you need to know when it comes time to really talk about extensions. First is the types of hair. What different types of hair do we use when we are using extensions? Like, where does the hair come from? That kind of stuff. The second thing is the types of extensions and their application. I kind of grouped those together. Originally, I had separated those out into two other items, but then as I started to write the presentation, I realized they really go hand in hand because the type of extension usually involves the application process. So we'll talk about that in the second half of this presentation to kind of go through first what kind of hair might you be using, but then also what are the different application methods that we use when we talk about extensions. All right, so let's start with types of hair. And we start with one of the most common synthetic types, which is canicolon. That will be on your state board, guaranteed. Okay, going to be on your state board. So canicolon is a synthetic hair. So it's a high quality synthetic hair that you see. When you see synthetic extensions, it's not real human hair. Typically, it's going to be canicolon. It's actually a monocrylic fiber. There's nothing wrong with it. It typically looks shinier than natural hair does because it's synthetic. It has some type of, acrylic fiber in it. The thing about canicolon is you can style it with a low heat, right? So if you need to, kind of lay it back down or do a little curl to it, you can do so with low heat, but it's not going to hold, curl, or style with a thermal iron like it would if it were natural hair or human hair, okay? So you're kind of limited with the canicolon extensions on what you can do in terms of changing the style with them. Usually they come with a predetermined wave pattern in it that it's been set into the actual extension. Therefore, they're kind of easy. You can just pop them in and there you go, but that's canicolon. So it is the most common synthetic fiber that we use for extensions, okay? The other thing that you might see yak hair or yaki. Okay, it is exactly what it sounds like. So I have a picture of an actual yak there because it is actually yak hair. So the yak itself has this long hair that comes from its belly. You can kind of see it. That hair is actually taken and turned into extensions. It's super coarse, but it's very inexpensive, and so it can be great for things like special events or competition hair. So things you might not know about me is that I'm actually a competitive hairstylist, right? So I have done a lot of competitive cut and color and fantasy hair. So I am one of those people that builds the sculptures out of hair. I love doing that kind of stuff. And so I've competed all over the place in this, and I have found that yak hair is actually some of the best hair to use for those situations. Yak hair is similar to yarn. Sometimes you'll see yarn extensions. It's actually braid in hair. It feels very coarse. It doesn't feel like human hair, but it's great to add an impact of color or, pops of color, however it is. So Yaki hair, super cheap. It's actually my preferred hair when I'm doing any type of fantasy hair, but it's not going to feel like human hair. So you're not going to like run your hands through it and think, oh, it's so soft and luscious. You're not going to get that from it, okay? So that's another common type of hair that we use. Then we get into our human hair extensions, which of course are the most expensive. So most commonly, the hair that we see is from India and Asia, okay? So that is the most affordable human hair that we have out there from India and Asia. The most expensive human hair we find is actually typically from Europe. It's often softer, so that's what people are looking for, is that softness, okay? So the most expensive hair, typically from Europe, usually coming from India, Asia, and that's the kind of stuff that your state board is going to ask is, where is it typically sourced from and where does the most expensive hair come from? And that would be Europe, okay? Typically the European hair, if it's very expensive hair, that's because it hasn't been colored, it hasn't been treated, it hasn't been a lot of things, which often means it's actually Remy hair, which is this next one here. So Remy hair is human hair. Let's be clear. Remy hair is human hair. However, Remy hair came from an actual donation, which means they cut it and the cuticle is perfectly intact, okay? So that leaves that cuticle layer nice and shiny and strong. It's not been processed. It's not dipped in silicones. It's not dipped in anything. So it looks like perfectly natural hair because it is. It's just natural hair. It's not been collected through brushes. It's actually been cut off and put into an extension, okay? So it's softer to the touch. It's much less processed. The thing about Remy hair is you better take care of it. Just like your natural hair, you have got to take care of Remy hair because that cuticle has been turned, it's there, it's intact, but just like your normal hair, if you fry it with a flat iron or anything like that, it's going to break apart just like natural hair would. So that's the most expensive type of human hair extension is usually Remy European hair. Okay, so those are the 4 types that we typically see in our world of extensions. So now we know the hair types. What options do we have for placement? How do we get them in the hair? And what are the applications, right? Some of these require certifications of some sort. You actually have to go take a 2-day course, spend a lot of money, and get certified in them. There's nothing wrong with that, actually, because if you are somebody who can make a living on extensions, I mean, you can charge big money for it, right? But you do have to know how to do it well. Others don't. Some of them, I mean, like I've said, I've done most of these in some way. I do quite a few of like sew-in extensions, microlinks, things like that for special occasions. So you don't always need a certification, but some of them require you to actually get that, or just to order the hair or the supplies for it. Okay. So one of the most common types of extension placement is a braid-in extension. So this is when we actually take loose hair, and this is when I mentioned that Yaki hair or sometimes even yarn extensions, it's actually made of yarn, that we feed it into a braid of some sort. You can see these pictures here, and we're adding length into the hair that way, okay? So these are these little micro braids, these little plaits right here, the single box braids, and you're actually feeding extra hair in to add length in, okay? So that's just your standard braid-in extension. You don't need any type of certification to do, just takes practice and very nimble fingers. I have arthritis. I don't know that I could actually do it. Okay, then you have your basic sew-in. Okay, so sew-in extensions, typically what we're doing is we're actually putting cornrows in the hair and we're taking a needle. You can see some of the needle shapes there, and you're actually going to sew the weft of hair into the braid. Now, on some hair, this can last, a whole month. In some, it's probably not going to last that long because the more you wash your hair, the more this is going to slide out. Where I've spent a lot of time doing sew-in extensions is for fantasy work, is for bridal work, because sometimes that bride needs a little hair for that day, but it's not something they don't want to invest, $1,000 in extensions, and they don't want to have to do the upkeep. So this is a really good option to incorporate length and hair into a special event and do it that way. Some people that don't have to wash their hair quite as often, they can get away with a sew-in, and actually it will last quite a bit of time. So it's not that it's a bad option, it's just not going to last as long as some of these other options. Okay, so we can use curved needles. There's different types of stitches you can do. It's a whole world of sew-in extension that you can really dive into. Okay. Then you have bonding. So bonding is glue. It's that simple, right? It's a bead of glue. It's actually a bead of glue that you put here, and then you put the weft on there, okay? So kind of like what we were saying about braiding is the more you wash your hair, the more that glue is going to come, get loose and come out, and the extension is going to fall out. But bonding could be really good for a special occasion. It could be good for a fantasy type style. It could be good, if you are somebody that doesn't have to wash your hair quite as much, you might get away with bonding. You can even probably do it yourself, honestly, because if you can cut them the right way, it could work out for you. I'm just saying, right? So in bonding extensions, we actually use a glue. We glue them right up onto that scalp, okay? So that's the bonding extension. Then you have fusion bonding, and this is different. This one often does require a certification. Now, when I went to school like a million years ago, you had to be certified to do fusion. Nowadays, I hear you can get some of these supplies at Sally's. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard that rumor, okay? So the way fusion bonding works is there's a little bead of, it's kind of like a glue, like a wax glue, that you literally take a small piece of hair and you combine it with the hair on the head and you roll them between, and then you take this little machine that you see right there and you hold them together, and it fuses the extension to the piece of hair. So this takes a very long time, but you can charge a lot of money, and it's some of the most natural, I'm hitting my laptop here, some of the most natural looking extensions that you'll actually see. So fusion bonding is we use this special tool that actually adheres a piece of extension to the hair. So these aren't wefts anymore, these are small pieces of hair you can see in the picture here. Then we get into microlinks. So microlinks, I think, kind of became a big thing when feathers became a thing. So, you know, I would say early 2000s, I still love them. I don't care. These feathers kind of came out. They're back again from what I'm seeing. And we used microlinks and micro beads to actually, you know, put them into the hair. So what a microlink is, it takes a little metal bead that you slide the extension piece in along with the actual hair. And then you take a crimping plier, basically. They make them for this. You don't just go to the hardware store and get a plier, and you crimp it. You actually like lock it into place, and it holds it all together. So the cool thing about microlinks is they don't do as much damage as some of these adhesives because, you know, you're not putting glue in the hair. They could do damage if you yank on them because they can rip your hair. But they also, you know, when you do something like this, yes, you're going to feel a bunch of metal clasps in your hair. You know, just be cautious. Make sure when you comb it, you're not combing right at the scalp. But that's basically any extension. You have to be careful with that. So that's your microlink. Now, the newer thing that you see is Tapein. So I say newer, it's probably 20 years old now, but new since I became a stylist, which now was probably longer than most of you have been born. Now that I'm saying that, it makes me uncomfortable and sad, but it's probably real that most of you watching these videos weren't alive when I went to hair school. Let's get over that moment for a second. Okay, so Tapein extensions are actually, they're small wefts of hair about this big, okay? And you have a double-sided tape that part of it attaches to the extension, part of it attaches to the other hair, okay? And you place them and you can see a picture of that here. The cool thing about Tapeins is they don't take a ton of time, and they can be reused, right? So you can have where basically you move them up for your client. They grow out, you move them up. And so it's kind of a repeat client situation, but it's not a huge investment on anyone's part. So that, you know, it makes it more affordable and it doesn't take a ton of your time to do either. So it tends to be a really good option nowadays, okay? So here's the reality. The world of extensions continues to evolve. So this is the stuff that you're probably going to see in a textbook, but I mean, there are so many other things out there now, and I feel like every time I go to a hair show, there's a whole nother approach to putting extensions in. Those that have found their niche in actually doing extensions are really those people that are going to continue to learn and continue to find all the ways and really learn them all, okay? So if extensions is your jam, start learning, right? Start saving up for some of these certification programs, watch the videos, go to the hair shows, learn how to do them, because you can make a lot of money if you make this like a priority for you. Mine was color. So for me, I took every training I could on color. Extensions was just never my passion. Color was. And so, you know, but if this is something that is important to you, take the time and learn all of the different ways because there's so much more to learn. As usual, I have to remind you guys that I do have a program called cosmetologyexamreview.com on my website. If you go to this website, I just had this question from somebody, so I feel like I should clarify. It's going to actually direct you to my parent website, which is the Intentional Classroom, because I make courses for teachers and students, and so everybody lives in one website for me. But my Cosmetology Exam Review website basically links you to the parent website. On that, you'll find 12 explainer videos, 75 practice tests. I break everything down by subject matter, different than the textbooks, and I really just try to highlight on the material or focus on the material that is relevant to the state board, right? Not all the extra stuff. It's kind of like a Cliff's Notes version of your cosmetology book, okay? This can work for any state and any textbook. I don't have per state. All I've done, guys, is I talk to teachers all over the country, students all over the country, and I ask questions. What's on your test? test? What did you need to know? And I continue to evolve the test from there. So if you need a little bit more information, go ahead and do that. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to share. Do all the things that you need to do, okay? So I appreciate you giving me 15 minutes of your life to review the theory behind extensions. I hope this helps with a couple more questions on your test, and I look forward to seeing you next time.